today we're going to be taking a look at this Lenovo ThinkPad laptop. It's got an issue where both of the charging ports have been damaged by some kids plugging in the wrong cable. So today I'm going to show you what it takes to take it apart, replace the ports, and put it back together. Let's get started. Alright, so we've got this Lenovo laptop. It's in decent shape, except looking inside the charge ports, you got clear signs of pin damage to those connectors, both of them. And obviously we're taking a look at this device because it's not charging. So something you can do is take a device like this, and we can plug it on in if you can't tell if there's any damage, and it will run a test, and it'll tell us if it recognizes anything wrong with the port. So here in a second, we'll come back with an open line, and the CC1 is also an open line, which it shouldn't be, and you can see we've got all of these other open lines, but this D plus is necessary, and then we can actually go over and plug it into the second one, and it'll immediately run another test, and we'll see what the results are of that, how they differ. And let's see what it says. We got a bunch of missing stuff, values that are out of whack. So let's open this up, and I'm going to show you how to replace one of these ports. We'll start by removing the surrounding screws on the back. Once those screws are all loose and free, we can then pop up the back panel and slide it off. These little screws have like this little washer, so you can just leave them intact and they're not going to go anywhere on you. Now we have this whole motherboard to deal with. First things first, let's disconnect the battery. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and remove the battery from the housing. That way it's not in my way at all with the flex cables. And just like that, the battery comes out. And now we got a bunch of screws around the motherboard that we need to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and take the time to do that. Alright, so we've got basically everything disconnected and the screws out. We'll need to gently flip this over because the board is still attached to the keyboard. So you don't want the board to flop down too hard, but we're going to go ahead and pop the keyboard. For that, we'll take a tool and we'll just pop up these keys here. Just like that. Pop right up with just a little flick. And then we'll twist these screws here, both of them. And then you may need a spudger or something. Sometimes you think the screw's out enough, but it's not yet. And the keyboard will come up, and then you can slide it out. And this will allow us access to the cables so that we can flip up the little flaps and slide out the two connectors. And we'll set the keyboard aside. Now when we flip this back over, we should be able to take out the whole motherboard. I totally forgot to pull out the tray here. Luckily I wasn't prying on it too hard. We'll get our little ejector and pop that out. Alright, now out comes the motherboard. And now we can go and address this Type-C charge port. And I just realized after close inspection, these aren't compatible. So we're going to pop off this one and do it first. The new port for this is quite unique because you've got your double road Type-C port. And then you've got these through hole pins for this other port here and a couple through holes for the legs. So it's a little bit of a complicated one to do, but it's totally doable. And I'm going to show you how I do it. The first thing that I'm going to do is isolate the area with some Kapton tape. I don't want to overheat any of these chips or melt any of the plastics. All right, so I built up a few layers of Kapton tape there. Gotta bring that up. And we might as well pop this one off while we are popping this one off because we're going to be subjecting the entire motherboard to heat. All right, I'm going to come in from below with some hot air and move back and forth into this area. I'll give it a nice heating. We'll come in first for this one. Basically, I'm looking for some movement, and then I can lift it without pulling any pads. And then we'll heat up this area. And this one's trickier just because of its size. That's why I don't have a reduction nozzle on at this point in time. And I'm constantly moving it back and forth so I'm not underheating any area. And it'll pop off like that. We'll let this cool down and then I'll show you what we'll do with that area. Probably under the microscope. Alright, so we have this through right here. Looks like we've got 14 through holes right there. We've got the 2 legs that'll be on this side. We've got our type C here and the other 2 legs. So really what I need to do is clear out all of the through hole areas, and we can apply solder later to those. But I don't want to melt any of the plastics in the connector. So I'm going to start by adding low melt to all of these holes so I can easily wick them out. We'll add some flux first. And the ones on the end, for example right here, I could probably wick them with just the iron tip. Let's see. If I take the wick and I carefully go over this hole, I'm patient enough. You can see I'm really close to getting all of the solder out of there, but it's not having it. And it might sound counterintuitive, but we're going to add solder so that we can remove solder. We'll add the solder. This is a 138 solder paste. Add this to the legs. And now you'll see if we go back in on that same hole and I try to wick it up, I can actually clear the whole hole. Or close to it. I'll go back in and get the rest of that. We'll probably just do a quick time lapse of me going over all of these joints so you can get an idea of how much work it is. So stick with me to the end. Alright, so what we've got to do now is add some solder to all of the pads for this Type C that's in the big port. There's a couple ways to do this. One is just with a soldering iron. What I'm going to do is just go over the area with some solder on the tip and try to make fairly even and consistent pillows of solder. But it's not perfect. It's a little, it can be uneven. So one of the ways that I do like to do it is I'll add some flux here. Get a little bit of the solder paste that I want to use. Come in with some hot air. And we're going to be using this ball solder spreader. And I'm going to be able to equally distribute. It's kind of hard to see because it was covered by all of that stuff, but you can see it's fairly equal. I'm just going to do this one more time. Come in with the hot air. This will warm up the board uniformly, and then with the solder blob on the end of this, I can deposit an equal amount of solder on all of those legs there. for all of the pads. And that's the benefit of having this type of a tip. Alright, now we'll turn our attention to the new port. As you can see, we've got a port that isn't damaged. So I will add some flux all over those pads, and we're going to pre-tin these. I'm going to come in with my iron, a little bit of solder on the tip there, and we're going to gently go over all of the legs to this connector. And then we'll do the same on the inner row without melting the plastics or anything. And just like that, we've pre-tinned all of the legs. And then as we go back over and look at this, we can actually do a dry test real quick. You know what? Now that I'm looking at this, I actually realized that this one isn't the right one either. Oh, that's super frustrating. As you can see, these joints are practically in line with, or at least the middle, the bottom row here is in line with the middle of these pads. But if we look at the connector I got, the bottom row of the through holes is above the top row, this row of pins, so this is not the right connector. Bummer. I guess there's just going to be a part 2. All right, so, well, here you can see again the damaged port, and you can see the alignment of where the pins meet up with these ones. And I just got in the new port that is identical. So this one will actually fit. When I line it up with the motherboard, you can see that it actually lines up with the holes. Everything goes through. This is going to be good. So now we need to prep the charge port. And the way that I do that, again, is really simple. I'm just going to add some flux to all of these legs that come off the port here, both rows. Take my soldering iron with some solder on the tip, and I'm just going to tin each one of those nice and silver. That way we can ensure that the solder sticks to them. And then what I like to do as well is put a little bit of flux covering all of the plastic around the area that I'm going to be heating. Actually acts as a shield, in kind of like almost like Captain Tape does, and it prevents the plastic from melting under temperature. So just a nice thin coating, and even though I won't be applying solder yet to these ones, I will put some flux on all of the pins here, all 14 of the through holes, as well as the legs. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to heat up the area. I like to watch all of the solder melt. I'm going to be using 380 Celsius at basically at a 50% airflow, and I'm going to heat it from below. You can see the tip there, and you'll see everything start to melt, get nice and shiny. And when it does that, I know that I can take the new port, slide it over the top, push it on down, let things cool down. And now if we tilt this at an angle, we'll be able to see the pins. Let's see if I can get a different angle on melting the solder here. And before I do much else, I'm going to reinforce everything real quick. I'm going to add a little bit of flux to the legs. And I'm going to take some solder and I'm going to flood the legs, reinforcing the port. And we'll come over to the other side and we'll do the same thing. We'll add a bit of flux, put the iron on there, let things heat up, and then we'll feed in the solder. Alright, we'll go to the back side and we'll fill in the through holes, and then I'll pull the solder up through the legs to reinforce it through the back side. Alright, I like the way everything looks so far, so I'm just going to add a little bit of flux, and we're going to carefully or quickly fill all 14 of these through holes for the other part of this larger port. So we've got a little bit of flux there, I've got some of the solder paste, And we're just going to go over and watch the solder sink through these holes, adding more solder as needed. You can see it sink down in there and encapsulate the pin that goes through the hole. That's what we need. And then what I like to see is it come back up and get these nice little pillows once it's gone all the way down. And I'll try to do all of this without touching the iron and accidentally melting any of the plastic on the port. There we go. Now finally, I'm going to take some time to go around and clean up all of the flux, wipe it off all of the surfaces that I've got it on. Alright, so now that I've taken the time to clean up all of the flux, it's looking really good. Let's go and test the port real fast. Alright, so we've got the new port installed. We'll go ahead and turn on our little reader here, and we'll plug it in. And if you remember back, we were getting all sorts of red all over the place. We should be seeing all green and good values. And there we go. We've got everything that was OL or grounded is no longer OL or grounded. The ones that are OL should be OL, and everything else should have a reading along with our grounds being good. So that means that this one's fixed. I'm still waiting for this one, but that's the same exact process as this, and it's slightly easier in my opinion because it's smaller. So, but that gives you a good idea of how to replace the port on a Lenovo laptop. And this one just needs to be put back together. Alright, so I finally got the correct charge port. As you can see, it does fit. And there's two things that I like to do. I like to prep both the board side and the actual port itself. To do the port's very simple. Just like the other one, I'm going to add a bunch of flux to the pins. So I want to tin them. Get out my soldering iron with a little bit of solder on the tip. And I'm just going to quickly drag across all of the pins, turning them from that gold to silver, just like so. And then I'm going to add some flux to the plastic that's exposed on the backside, because during the reflow, if you heat this up too much, you can start melting the plastic. And I probably won't melt the plastic because I've done it enough, but it's a really good idea to shield the plastic with flux. It will insulate it to a certain degree. Now we're back into view. Add some flux, and I'm going to get a little bit of solder paste here on the end of my little ball tool, and we're going to spread it around and distribute it evenly on all of the pads. And there we go. We've got a nice even distribution of solder. I'm going to wipe away the excess, and then we'll add back a little bit of flux to help prevent oxidation. Now I'm going to come in from below with the hot air, and we're going to heat up the motherboard. Till everything's melted. And then we'll overlay the charge port, let things kind of solder down. Then we'll pull the heat away, let things cool down. And I'm going to come in with the iron, and we're going to quickly tack some of these legs to secure the port in place. Now you'll see it went into the holes, but if I add flux, it's going to ride up onto the legs, and that's what I'm looking for, is some movement up onto the legs, just like that. That way I know that it's nice and secure. Let me show you the difference here, doing it with or without flux. So if I come to this side, and we try to apply the solder, nothing wants to get pulled down into that hole. It'll stick to some of the metal, but if I go to the other side with the flux, you see it immediately sticks to everything that had flux on it, and I'm actually able to get it to sink down into that hole there. So if I go back in with flux on this side and I heat it up, all of a sudden it wants to do the same thing. We haven't yet got all the way through the hole. We're going to flip over the board and do that. I also want to just get a visual on all of the pins, making sure they had a nice solid connection, and they do. nicely connected to each one of those pins. All right, we'll flip it over. We'll add some flux to all of the legs, and then we'll add some solder to the through holes. And what's nice is if you look at the plastic on the back of the charge board, it didn't melt because I was able to control the flow of temperature, the airflow, and the temperature. Now the flux that I'm working with, it doesn't discolor easily, but the flux that encapsulates the solder face that I'm using, it does. So it gets really dark real fast, which is kind of annoying. I like the way that the solder melts. I don't like the way that it leaves kind of the burnt flux behind. So now I'm going to take the time to add some alcohol, and we'll clean up the area, getting rid of all of the flux and make it nice and pretty. Alright, that side's clean, and now we'll go and do the same to the other side. Now all we have to do is go and test it before installing it back inside the laptop. Alright, so now that we have that port replaced, let's go ahead and test it. We'll turn on our little iBridge tester, and we'll connect it up. And last time we were seeing obviously signs of damage and some red, and this time we hope to see it all green. And there we go. We've got all of the values that I typically see, so I know that this port is installed correctly and there's no other issues. So now we can take off the Kapton tape and we can reinstall this back into the frame. Now I know I didn't show disconnecting everything, but I want you to get an idea of what we have to reconnect. We've got flex cables, speakers, coax cables, antennas. There's the display connectors here, antenna connectors, Wi-Fi modules. There's a bunch of flexes that we have to make sure we don't miss when we go back to install this. So I want to take my time when I reinstall this, making sure we don't miss any of that. And now that I've verified that everything's above it, we just need to go and connect them. And some of these didn't even connect to anything, like this guy didn't even connect to anything. But we still want to put them back. Alright, now that everything's connected back up, we'll put back the screws, and it's really easy to determine where they are because they have these little white arrows, as there's like plenty of places that look like they go there. The only place they really go is where these little white arrows are. And there's only 4 of them, so we'll put them all back. We'll put back the bracket here, and this one on top of here, and we'll put back the 3 screws that belong to that bracket. I forgot that one's for the back case. It's these 3. We'll forget the tray here. Now before I install the battery, let's get the keyboard reinstalled. This one's really dirty. Maybe I should take the time to clean it. It's definitely seen a little bit of liquid, so yeah, let me take the time to quickly clean this up before installing it. Take some isopropyl alcohol, and we'll just sit here for a few minutes going back and forth, getting rid of all the gunk. Alright, that is a ton better. So let's go ahead and connect back up the keyboard. Alright, that's in. So we'll flip down the flaps, clean that up a little bit, and we'll install the top and then slide the bottom down. And now we can tighten up these screws. The hinge system that holds this together is really neat with these 2 screws that just spin until they get tight, and it sucks everything down tight. All right, we'll go ahead and clip back in these 2 guys. Go ahead and give the trackpad a good cleaning. All right, that looks a ton better. And let's flip this back over. Actually take some time I'm just in the cleaning mood. Let me clean up this display. That is much better. Now we can install the battery. Now we can put the back cover back on. Alright, after tightening all of those screws down and everything clicking into place, now we can go ahead and charge it and watch it turn on. Alright, we've got a charging light. I'm going to go charge this up for a little bit and we'll test it out. And it's all fixed and charging once again. As you can see, the process is somewhat complicated. Obviously, you have to have the right parts and the right tools to do it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If there's something that you'd like to see in a future video, let me know as well. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.